Hello, and welcome to the Miami Showband Peace Center Online, a truth and reconciliation platform project. Music is a universal language that transcends all barriers. It is an unassailable platform where truth and love are safe. And during our darkest days, it gave us leave to clap our hands and to dance together. Music is a bridge over troubled waters. Truth and Reconciliation Platform, or TaRP as it's commonly called, invited artists to dedicate a song or a piece of music to victims of the conflict on the island of Ireland, frequently referred to as the Troubles, or to an event or a memory that for them holds a particular poignancy. What follows is their response to our invitation. And my guest today is Mike Hanrahan. As many of you will know him from Stockton's Wing, but also, as you'll hear during this conversation, Mike is a man of many talents, and he's been around the block more than most musicians and wonderful stories to tell. You're very, very welcome, Mike.
I'm delighted to be here, Stephen. Thrilled, actually. It was great to talk to you and great to see you again.
Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm born in Ennis in County Clare, reared in Ennis. I went to school there, learned my music and my early music in Clare, and originally played tin whistle, but like a band or family band and some neighbours, we were called the St. Michael's Cayley Band because we lived in St. Michael's Villas. And the place was full of music, full of musicians. We were blessed. We had great teachers as well, of course. There was a guy called Frank Custy who was living outside Ennis in a place called Tuna, and he taught us all how to play tunes, and he tried to teach us how to read music, but we were all miserable failures, all of us. But and as a result, none of us ever learned how to read or write music, but we played. And there was a few great characters. We were part of the whole cultist thing as kids, and we entered flares and all that sort of thing. And then around 12 years of age, I found a guitar that my brother was using, and I also discovered the music of Leonard Cohen. And I started playing guitar, and it was an old gut string, a 6-string gut string guitar that was pretty brutal, but it got me around, and I got my first few lessons from a Franciscan priest, Father Pat Coogan, a lovely, wonderful man who taught me how to play guitar and get me to my first few chords. And from there, what was the songs you learn? She'll be coming down the mountain, Katie Daly and all those, and then you move on, and then suddenly entered Leonard Cohen into my life, and that was me changed. I started writing songs, and I wanted to be Leonard Cohen.
And did you become Leonard Cohen?
No, I didn't know, and I kind of got rid of that. I learned a lot from his writing, and I was besotted by the man. I'd read his novels and all his poetry books, and I've every one of his albums he's ever recorded. I just admired the way he put songs together, and I studied him as a lyricist, as a songwriter, because I figured he had it nailed. His imagery and the way he put words together, and then you discovered that he spent weeks, months, sometimes years writing one song, and that was a great lesson for me as a writer, because I guess one of our big failings as young writers who are not taught the few little elements that are, because it is a craft, and as I said to a lot of people, it's as much a craft as it is when you're making a table or a chair. A chair won't sit on 2 legs, it has to have the 4 legs or the 3 legs, so there's basic rules and regulations, and it's the same with a song. And I learned so much from reading about Leonard Cohen in his interviews and how he put, and then he did the whole series of where he put some of his songs from scratch to finish, and you were able to read how the development of the words and the lines, and he explained where he was going with these things, and it was fascinating reading for me. So I think, yeah, I never became Leonard Cohen, but I think I became one of his students as a writer, and I learned a lot from him, as I did from a lot of other writers. But I guess for him, I loved the way he put his imagery, and it stays with me. My writing, is all about imagery. I I use imagery for everything, and I like to develop. And I spend so long with my songs, and I'll edit. In fact, the editing is my favorite part of the writing. It's you have your idea, and once you have a good idea, I know how to put things together, and then it's those weeks or months sometimes before you're finally saying, well, okay, this I'll let this go now.
So when did Hanrahan begin to emerge?
I think I've always seen myself as a songwriter. Even as a kid, as a teenager, when I was writing songs, when I was working with Maura O'Connell, I was writing songs. Stockton's Wing invited me to join the band and invited my songs, so I was always heading that direction, and I always associated myself as a songwriter. So hence I never did any covers. I'd say I've probably in my lifetime, I might have sang a handful of covers because I've been engrossed in my own writing for all my life. But I think you develop better as a writer as you get older. I think I finished one song I started 10 years ago. And then last year during lockdown, it was like amazing time for me. It was suddenly I was reacquainted to my writer self, and I started writing. And maybe it is I'd written a book 2 years previous to that. My writing was beginning to be tuned, all right, but not as a songwriter. So I started writing songs again last year, and I think I've emerged now, and I'm proud of what the outcome. I'm happy writing songs, actually, Stephen. That's what gives me such joy.
So you mentioned playing with Maura O'Connell. You had a duo with her. You must have been about 18 or 19, called Tumbleweed.
Yeah, we were kind of doing Americana music at the time. We were kind of well ahead of our time for Ennis, but we were helped along by a great man called PJ Curtis, who had been working with the Bothy Band, and he had retired, and he was a great collector of music, still is, and he's a great writer now. He's a novelist, and he had a few great years on radio. PJ, he was a wonderful man, but he heard us one night singing, and he kind of invited out to his cottage outside Ennis and started introducing us to these amazing songwriters like Graham Parsons, and then from there we discovered Emmylou Harris, and her first album was out, and we got wind of that, and so we started chasing Americana music and listening to people like Rodney Crowell back in the day, and that's what we were singing. We were singing Loudon Wainwright was around at the time, touring, and we ended up doing a few gigs with him in Ireland, and we had a couple of great years. We did our first tour, folk club tour in a Morris Minor. I remember a black Morris Minor, and the tour was in the folk clubs. There was a great folk club circuit in Ireland. It was called the Fáine, and it was organized by people who really loved to have live music in their town or their village, and they got together a few times a year and organized it, that artists could come into Ireland, or Irish artists could tour around Ireland and just do, like, Tuesday in Crusheen and Clare, Wednesday they could be in Galway, Thursday could be Sligo, and then it was like such an organized touring event for us. So that was our first taste of the big time for the two of us, and it was great. We've been friends ever since. In fact, my last gig before lockdown was a gig with Maura O'Connell in New York last year. It was our last gig together.
You mentioned Crusheen. I mean, it's a privilege to play anywhere in Clare, but is that the gig? It's a lovely small intimate gig, isn't it? In Crusheen.
Stunning. The Highway Inn, and there was no PA. And I saw Henry McCullough there as a kid, like an acoustic guitar, and I saw young Barry Moore, Christy Moore. These were people who were kind of streaming ahead of us, and Joe Galligan was the guy that ran the folk club, and you daren't breathe during a song. you know, or even if you looked like you were going to whisper to the people next to you, he'd pounce, you know. So he demanded this respect from the audience for the artist. So it was like, sure, I suppose we'd have known about places like Carnegie Hall and all that. That was our Carnegie Hall because it was a silent and beautiful. And I will always remember my Maura and myself our first gigs there because Joe gave us the break. He gave us the first 2 gigs and put us on as support artists, and you get that audience applause. And somebody recently gave me a cassette recording of one of the gigs we did, and it's fascinating. I mean, we're quite green in between. We're introducing. I remember we did on that tour. We did a gig in Carrigan-Shure in Bobby Clancy's place.
Yeah.
And I think it was a hotel they had, was it, Stephen? It was
yeah, well, they had 2 hotels. There was Mount Richard was the first one, then Tinvain, probably Tinvain.
There was a room underneath in the place, like a cellar bar. And we did the gig, and I always remember Bobby saying to Maura, we were talking after, he said, "Jez, you're great. And Maura, you're what a beautiful voice," he said, "but you have to remember that the people that they're singing to are in front of you. They're not on your shoes." And that always stuck with us, that, you know, and Bobby was a lovely man, a great supporter as well.
Yes. That venue was owned by Bobby's sister, Court, who unfortunately was killed. She's Robbie O'Connell's mother, and sister of the Clancy brothers. So Robbie was on the program last week with us.
Oh yeah, I saw that. It was great. Yeah. Robbie used to meet Robbie with Stockton's Ring. We were so blessed. We met all these artists, great artists touring, and they shared dressing rooms with us, and they shared beers and shared good times and shared great stories, and they gave us great respect, which was I always loved about the Clancys and the Dubs. All those they were special people. And I guess before Liam died, there was a gig called the Legends of Irish Folk, which was a tour with Ronnie Drew, Liam, Finbar Fury, Johnny McAvoy, Paddy Riley, and Jim McCann was MC. And I got the gig as music director for whatever it was. It was like, they needed somebody to direct 3 chords. So they rang me. And I said, yeah. And I did that whole tour with them. And I worked with Liam every night. And he was such an amazing artist, an amazing man. And I developed such a great respect for him during that tour. It's great. So I'm thrilled that I got that in my life as well.
But you hit the big time very quickly. How did the electric Stockton's Wing come about?
The lads, when I joined the band, they were a trad band, but I'd been writing pop songs basically, and I never sang traditional songs, so that wasn't going to be part of it. So the songs I was writing needed that bigger sound, I think. And PJ Curtis saw that, the producer, and we talked, and we all wanted to move on, and it kind of organically happened that the band's sound developed. The lads playing, the front musicians, Kieran, Morris, Paul, and Tommy, they were all Ireland champions in their own instruments. They could play, they were amazing, but they had great energy as well. And I just think from around 1980, when I joined, everybody was ripe for it. And the first single, Beautiful Affair, was a hit. And then we had to make the choice. We had to go big sound because we were using drums and bass and keyboards in the studio, and we couldn't replicate the sound with the 5 of us. So we had to make that move. And when we did, that was the start of it. It all took off then.
When I think back on, say, Horslip's electrified folk music, and it was very much a rock band. Especially Johnny Fiend's influence would have been huge. Mm-hmm. But I felt that when I first heard Stockton's Wing gone electric, it wasn't so much rock as it was almost funk.
Yeah, there was definitely an element to it. We had great drummers and great bass players. And I also think, like, well, for me, Horstops were they were my heroes. I was besotted by the band. And I think they definitely influenced me on my input to Stockton Swing, because not that we were never going to be a Horstops, because Horstops were rock first and foremost. Fran Breen, our drummer, our first major drummer, when he was playing with us, he was trying to get his head around how to play. And Fran was, Fran, he was an accomplished drummer, a genius. And we just said, you need to learn the tune. So he went away and learned the tunes, and that was the development of that sound. The bass player learned the tunes. They learned the tunes first so that they could actually understand what they were walking into. And that created this sound, and I think that was the great excitement of it all.
It interests me how you came across John Walsh.
John was living in Dublin, and I think we actually auditioned for a bass player. And John came to the audition, and I remember there was an old dilapidated rehearsal studios in what's now Temple Bar. It wasn't Temple Bar then, it was almost like a rat infested part of Dublin. It was just, but there was a great energy about that whole Temple Bar. And there is now about the new one, but it's a different energy. So we were rehearsing there, and we went through, the bass players were coming in to play, and John came in, and we just thought, oh, hold on a minute, there's something going on here. And he was an amazing player. I mean, you taught him, for God's sake. So you knew what he was like. And he ended up, he was great man to play a tune. He knew all the tunes, and he knew the different nuances of the tunes. And John would get together with Sid, the keyboard player, and the drummers, and me on guitar, and we'd try and work out how to get really exciting back into these tunes, the new tunes. Some of these tunes the lads were writing at that stage then as well. And that was a great development for us. I mean, they've been writing all the songs, but when the lads started writing the tunes, it was amazing. And we all did it together with a band. So we were a really good band of brothers out making good music. I think that's all we wanted to do, yeah.
I remember hearing you later on in Bad Bob's in Covent Garden in London. We did a stint. It was on St. Patrick's Day. Johnny Feen and myself, and we had a crazy band called the Psycho Pats at the time, and we were doing a whistle stop. The usual thing on Patrick's Day, you do about 6 gigs in London or New York or wherever it was. This was in London. But I remember we were rushing off to another gig afterwards. We did a quick hello with yourselves. I remember Johnny saying to me that we had been listening to yourselves, and that there is such a delicate balance between what you described as this fabulous traditional players not being lost in a funk band or an electric band. At the same time, the electric band and the bass player and the drummer complementing this, that there is this fine balance that can go wrong, isn't there?
Oh God, yeah, it can go wrong. And I mean, and it went wrong with us a few times, but I think we were so, it was really important. It wasn't a rule we made, but the lads were just, all the front guys in the band were willing to travel with their music. They'd come from a real strict traditional background, but they were willing to jump and go beyond the pale and see where it took them. I mean, it did. Paul Roach, the flute player, he's one of the most incredible flute players you'll ever hear. And the things he does with the flute, where he goes, Kieran on the banjo doing things that had never been done before on the banjo with his triplets, different things, and sticking it with the drummer, and then the drummer answering back, and there was all this Morris on the fiddle. Jeez, what the stuff they did with their own instruments, but always sticking to the tradition of where they came from with the tunes. It was a hidden rule within our music in the band that we'd never lose that, because that's where the energy of the gig was. The songs were like the shop window, Stephen, that they got it on the airwaves, and they got the people to know us, and that was, and they served that really well. And then when the people came to the gigs, then they got a completely different angle on what it was to have a night out. And that's why I think our gigs, the Wing, it was all about the live gig. It was about the energy, and there was a relationship between the stage and the audience, which was magic. Every night we played, when we were into it, because towards the end you kind of get tired, you're not really up for it. But when we were at the height of our game, every gig was like, it was the All Ireland final, you know, and we went out there to play, but the places were packed, and we had a ready-made audience and ready-made bands. So the gigs were magnificent. They were amazing experiences.
So to keep that balance between the traditional, the real traditional, authentic traditional music, and the electric side of the band, then it became more complicated because you added the dimension of doing original songs. So how did you merge all of those three in together?
Well, I think, you see, as I said, there was always original songs, and I was writing songs in that idiom of pop, really. So it was a natural thing that we'd be getting the drums and bass, but then we had to figure out where did the top instruments sit with the songs. And we had some really great producers, and then we spent, when we weren't gigging, we were rehearsing, because we were single, we were young, we didn't give a hoot, we just wanted to make music. So we were constantly rehearsing and rewriting things. So I might write a song. I remember writing a song called So Many Miles, complete and utter pop song. And the boys put a reel into it, you know. And then they whittled the reel down, they broke it down. Instead of doing the 32 bars or whatever, they took 8 bars, and they developed that 8 bars, and suddenly that became the hook, you know. But it was in real time, and it was played like a reel. So there was always those layers of the front and the songs and the backline. We always tried to maintain that relationship. Sometimes we went way off the top of the beaten track with it, and that's fine. We did an album called Full Flight, which wasn't really well received at the time. I still think it was one of our best albums, and that's the album where Joe Duffy's tune is from, at that period when we really experimented with the music, and we had a great producer in Andrew Boland, and we allowed him to take us wherever he thought we should go, and we went, and we created some great stuff in that album. It didn't catch on with the audience, but then I think that was coming towards the end of our kind of the height of our success. It was a lull period for us, but I still think it was a great album.
And Andrew Boland again would understand that type of music, because I mean his brother Greg Boland was a seasoned guitar player in that style of music as well, wasn't he? I remember working with Greg on when I played bass on Barry Devlin's solo album Barry from Horselips.
He got the trad thing as well, and even though he's very jazzy in his influence and all that, and funk as well, a lot of stuff. So, but I think he did a great job for us.
And was it the album A Light in the Western Sky? Was that the one that set the band up?
Yeah, that was in 82. PJ Curtis and Brian Masterson, and genius on the engineer. Yeah, we recorded that. That was a very experimental album, and I think it's the album that kind of marked us for where we were going, because the songs, there was 6 original songs, there was a few original tunes in it, but it was what we did with some of the tunes and the experimentation in the studio. PJ Curtis really pushed the boat out. From a production point of view, it's a class album now, and we definitely created a bit of a stir. I mean, it was like, I always remember Hot Press when they were reviewing the album, and they were saying that like it's a great rock album, and you're not a rock band, and it's a great traditional album, and you're not a trad band. What are you? And that was the kind of they always had trouble. I remember one there was one great heading on a piece that they wrote. It was like a hen, a doe, a tree, a car, are Stockton's wing, the Ramones of Irish music.
So it's probably the best compliment you can get when somebody can't. I know it's a problem at the beginning, but when somebody can't categorize you, can't put you into a pigeonhole like that, it means you've invented your own thing.
Yeah, and we all, you're so right. And I felt we created our own sound. And sure, we really annoyed some of the purists, and that, yeah. And then within Irish music, within the popular Irish music, the fact that we were doing pop songs would have really annoyed those people who thought they were, doing something extra special with the music. They were doing their own thing, and so were we. And I think we've always stayed true. There is a thing called the wing sound. And even now, when we have a lot of younger players coming through since we got back doing a few gigs, some of the older band are not working anymore, not gigging. We get the younger players in. Most of them are from County Clare, and they were born and reared with the music of Stockton's Wing. But we are only interested in continuing Stockton's Wing once it's the wing sound. We don't want to create any other new sound. We'll write some new music, which we're planning on this year, but it will be written in the wing tradition, and that's what we'll keep going. And I think I'm very proud of what the band did and what we achieved as musicians, but more so as writers and people who try to develop the music like we did, because that's all we were interested in, was creating good music. That was our only drive,
When you listen to songs like Beautiful Affair or Walk Away, they are instantly recognizable as Stockton's Wing.
Yeah, but we were very lucky that when you see you've got the lads playing as well, and on the Beautiful Affair you've got that great whistle instrumental in the middle, which is like it's people know it off by heart. But as well as that, we had the support of FM radio. The radio, 2FM were just starting. We came out with this sound, and they all loved it. All the new young DJs now who are now established, and they took to our music and played it. We were lucky, and that brought us into the charts. And of course, when you get into a chart, then everything changes. You've been played every day on the radio.
And you surrounded yourself with people who understood the music, which was very, very important. I mean, you mentioned Brian Masterson earlier on. Brian he had been working with Jolene Jackson and people like that, and they knew exactly. He was in one of those sort of hybrid type, moving forward and yet using traditional music too, wasn't he? Jolene used to get amazing sounds on the keyboard. Like
that album he did was amazing. That album should be written down as one of the greatest of all time, and what he did at the time, and he really pushed the boat out. And I love the album. And Brian was such a genius at the desk, but he was willing to go wherever people wanted to go, and he went on the journey with us. So in the studio there was PJ, there was Brian, and the wing, and we were all driving this, and somebody suggests something to go here, try this thing. Yeah, let's go for it. We were all in it together to create the Light in the Western Sky album that we're so proud of now. I mean, you think about it, we were a bunch of guys from the West who started doing a few folk clubs and a few gigs, and then suddenly we had a hit single, and then it was bang, it was into the big venues. So it was one rolled into the next, and it was like we were on a roller coaster I'd say a good roller coaster for maybe 5 years, solid years. And that's a lot for any band. So we didn't care. We look back, I don't think we even thought about those gigs. The main fiddler was like it was all Irish people, mainly Irish people who were immigrants who had gathered into this amazing venue, and the energy in main fiddler. So there again, when we walked out on that stage, it was like, how's it going? You're welcome, everybody. It was a powerful experience. We were so lucky, Steve, that we went through that time, and we all survived it, and it was great. But we made a lot of friends, and oh Jesus, yeah, there was the fiddler was a mighty gig. If you're going to answer the question about are you learning, I'm constantly. I wrote a book and released it, and then I decided to go on tour with the book. So it was me, my book, my stories, my songs. I'd never done anything like it before, but it was a revelation. But I had to learn how to cope with that sort of a kind of an entertainment, and it was gorgeous. And I can't wait to go back when the gigs come back, and I think I'm going to do more solo gigs because I've been on my own for singing in this room here for 12 months, and I just want to develop that as a solo artist.
That was a terrific project. Your book is fabulous, but the fact that you wrote there talking, singing, it's a lovely combination. And I know from previous conversations with yourself and the first real project that you and I worked on was with our mutual friend and your great friend Paul Ashford, who was the bass player with the Miami going back to 1967, and went on with Step Aside and bands like that, and played with the Fury Brothers. I know from the conversations that you have a great empathy with people, without being too specific, but you have a great empathy with people who have suffered. And does that make its way into your life, into your stories, into your songs?
Yes, I definitely think, my songs are all very personal to me in a sense, but then you write them and you don't want to be just all about me. So people inspire me. And most of my songs are inspired by people. All the new songs I've written, it's people that have inspired the songs. I've written a song for my mum who's going through dementia, and I've written a song for her. There was another friend of mine who was just heading into hospital, and he's great now. But it was after a discussion we had. He was really worried. For the first time in his life, he said he was worried, and we had a really great evening together. And he's flying now. But that discussion we had, and that what I saw in his eyes, that fear in his eyes that I hadn't seen before, that kind of inspired another song. And then there's another song written called that's inspired by people who have been magic during these times to help you out when you're down and you're low. Somebody just to pluck you out of that. And that's, so for me, I wrote a song about Paul. I mean, that's Paul. He's always with me. That's Paul Ashford you're talking about. The relationship with Paul has been kind of, I grew up in Ennis, and my dad used to work at a dance hall selling tickets. So as a kid, I was going into the dance halls. I was meeting all the bands. I met the Miami, and I was fascinated by Fran O'Toole. I cut out the pictures of his song words, and I still have that here today. And what Fran was, he was the first superstar I'd seen, Irish superstar. You'd be looking at people like David Cassidy and all these people, and when I was a teenager, and then suddenly it was this guy, and he was one of our own, and he was creating this amazing music. He was a brilliant songwriter, and and then to discover a few years later that he was one of Paul's great mates, because I met Paul and we were great friends. And Paul always swore that when he thought he remembered me as a kid into dance halls, because I used to pester Showbands as a kid for photographs and autographs. And that's where I got my love of the stage, because I'd see all these Showbands doing the gigs. And I just wanted to be there. I wanted to be up there. My dad would always sneak me in to have a look. There's a photograph somewhere in my home of sitting on Butch Moore's knee, who did the year after he won, or he was in the Eurovision. And that's where I got my love. So the fact that we came back years later and I met Paul became my best mate for so many years. And then we met and we did that show together, this amazing show. So I've always been connected to that kind of music and those kind of people. And I treasure that. I treasure that connection. I treasure I could list off so many the Showband names because I had all the photographs. And it's funny when I meet people now. I mean, I think Brian Card and the Buckaroos and all those bands meant a lot to me as a kid. And Jesus, the work the Showbands did, what you did was incredible, and the amount of work you did. But you entertained a lot of people, and that's where I get my love of the live gigs and the excitement from.
Well, Mike, I think it's about time you sang a song for us. What song are you going to do, and where are you going to do this?
So this is a song called Where the River Rolls. And it's for my mum, who's in the depths of dementia. She's on that final stage. And it struck me about dementia is working with somebody and visiting people with dementia. It's a different death than a sudden death, because they leave you, and even though they're there physically with you, but they're actually leaving you, and you kind of just get to a point where you really wish them the best on their journey, that their suffering is over. And that's what this song is about. I don't pray, so I guess this is my prayer to my mum, wishing her best on her journey, and just saying thanks for what an amazing life. And I see the river as the journey of a river is like it's a journey of life anyway. And that's what this song is, especially for my mum. And I'm thrilled that we're going to record her with the Forget Me Nots choir later on in the year, who I got involved with through Brendan Grace a couple of years ago. They're going to record a song with me, and then I've invited Lisa Lamb, and I've invited Sandy Kelly as well to join us, and it's going to be such a beautiful event. And in terms of songs, this song has kind of found its home by finding its way to the Forget Me Nots choir. So I'm very happy with that. And so I'll sing it for you. I hope you like it. A River Rolls On. To the sea, to the place where you long to be, far away from the high mountain stream. A river rolls on to the sea, down through the hills and the glade. You roll on through sunshine and rain, round the oak and the willow you came, even the birds sing your name. They're singing this song for you now. In their hearts you forever live on and on. And they sing of your grace and your joy as you gently go rolling by. With a tear and a smile, shoreline, ocean breeze. So there you will set your heart free, where the river falls to the sea. So go now, your time here is done. Time to stop lingering on and on. And you'll soon feel the soft ocean breeze, where the river falls to the sea. You long to be now, so roll on, yeah, roll on, roll on, roll on, and soon we'll be with you there, to breathe in the salt in the air. Remember the moments we shared, Go set your sail and sail away. Yes, sail away. Sail away. Sail away. Go now, your time here is done. Time to stop lingering on and on. And you still feel the soft ocean breeze where the river falls to the sea. 'Cause we're singing this song for you now. In our hearts you forever live on and on. Yeah, we sing of your grace and your joy as you gently go rolling by. With a tear and a smile, roll on by. Yeah, roll on, roll on, roll on. A river rolls to the sea. A river rolls to the sea. A river rolls to the sea. And a river falls to the sea.
It's an incredibly beautiful song. And it clearly means so much to you. As you said earlier on, it's what it's all about, believing in your songs and believing in the words that you sing and you use.
Yes, yeah, I'm very proud of the song and very proud of who it's for, and I think it's I hope it brings some comfort to people who are going through this as well.
Well, it's been an enormous privilege talking to you again, Mike. Not only are you an exceptionally talented musician and songwriter, and that your story is amazing, but you're also an amazing human being. I know that the empathy you have with all of the problems that go on in the world today, when I talk to you, sometimes it seems like you take them on your own shoulders. I hope that we'll continue to hear the music that you make, and the very, very best of luck with all of your future endeavors.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. Always. I mean, we've had treasured times together, and normally it's never 5 minutes. And that's what I love about our company, that 5 minutes just wouldn't do us. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you all the best with everything you do. And what you're doing is really, really special and very, very, very positive.
Thanks, Mike. Perhaps you'll finish off with a song. What would you like to do, and why do you choose this one?
This is a song called Chase the Moon, and written only recently. And I want to dedicate it to all those people who support each other, particularly during these strange times. And this is a song about getting to the other side. Chase the Moon. Heave away and haul away, Maura. Heave away beyond this raging tide. When we hear the oarsmen singing, land ahoy, heave aside. When we reach the swells out there across the water, far beyond the foam we'll rise and fall. Let mercy be the wave that takes us home. So let's roll, roll, and chase the moon, chase the moon, chase the moon, chase the moon. Let's chase the moon, let's chase So let's heave away and haul away, Maura. Heave away and soon we'll touch the sky. We'll raise the oars on high, we're coming home. So let's row, row, and chase the moon, chase the moon, chase the moon, chase the moon. Let's chase the moon, let's chase. Your eyes, the fear you no longer hide deep inside. Let me take you now, and nature's fickle breath upon your brow. Yes, you wear it like a crown. Whoa. Chase the moon, chase the moon, chase the moon, let's chase the moon, chase the moon. So let's hear